movement, and the International African Revolution. Today, I want to talk to you about this attack on Grandmaster Jay. I'm sure most of you have heard something about it. I'm sure that would be one of the reasons for many of you coming to this discussion on today. And we've characterized this attack on Grandmaster Jay as part of the Grandmaster Plan. And we characterize it as the Grandmaster Plan because the Grandmaster Plan is the colonial domination of African people and the peoples of the world. And it's extremely important for us to engage in this discussion and every discussion with some kind of understanding that we're up against a particular kind of social system that was created through enslaving African people and colonizing Africans and most of the people around the world, and that most of the people on Earth today are suffering the consequence of having some kind of relationship with a system that was born through first the enslavement of African people, the colonial enslavement of African people, and all of the economic and political structures that have come from that since that time. And has made Europe and white people, generally speaking, rich and wealthy, and establish these social systems for them that gives them the ability, the power to define the world, to make all the laws that subjugates most people on the planet Earth. So that's the master plan, is colonialism. And we say that the attack on the Grandmaster Jay attack was an attack by the master plan. I want to just first of all share with you this press release that came from the United States Attorney's Office from the Western District of Kentucky. We're talking about Kentucky, the Louisville, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was murdered, and where the feds put out no kind of press releases talking about how they were going to deal with her murderers. In fact, most of them have not had to face, none of them has had to face any really serious consequences. But here's the press release, and it is dated Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. For immediate release, INFAC leader, Grandmaster Jay, charged with assaulting law enforcement officers. Louisville, Kentucky. John F. Johnson, AKA Grandmaster Jay, has been charged via criminal complaint with assaulting federal task force officers, announced United States Attorney Russell Coleman. Here in Kentucky, this is a quote, "We revere our First and Second Amendment freedoms, not foolishness which puts police and protesters at grave risk," unquote, said U.S. Attorney Russell Coleman. Quote, "The FBI respects the rights of individuals to peacefully exercise their First Amendment rights," said FBI Louisville Division Special Agent in charge, Robert Brown. "Our mission of protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution is dual and simultaneous, not contradictory. Accordingly, we are committed to investigating violent behavior on those who are exploiting legitimate peaceful protests and engaging in violations of federal law." Johnson, 57, of Westchester, Ohio, was arrested at his home on December 3rd, 2020. He appeared before a federal judge in Louisville this afternoon. According to the criminal complaint, Johnson forcibly assaulted, resisted, opposed, impeded, intimidated, and interfered with federally deputized task force officers while they were engaged in or on account of the performance of official duties when Johnson aimed a rifle at them on September 4th, 2020 in Louisville, Kentucky. So this was September. And so they wait 3 months. Johnson brandished an AR platform rifle at federally deputized task force officers for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Secret Service, and Louisville Metro Police Department officers. The task force officers were on the roof of the Jefferson County Grand Jury Building, keeping the watch on Jefferson Square Park, where there were armed protesters gathering. Upon arriving at the eastern edge of the roof, the officers and task force officers began their surveillance. A short time after initiating surveillance, some of the officers were blinded by a light which they shortly thereafter determined was a flashlight mounted to the rifle being aimed at them by Johnson. According to the complaint, the officers and task force officers advised that they all perceived a threat from Johnson based on him aiming his rifle at them. All officers advised they were concerned Johnson might intentionally or even accidentally discharge a round at them. All officers recognized that the distance between themselves and Johnson was well within the effective range of the AR platform style rifle. Two of the officers advised that they were wearing the LMPD, Louisville Metro Police Department soft body armor with police semi-reflected placards identifying them the night of September 4, 2020. None of the officers had drawn their handguns, and only one of the officers had a rifle with him, which he did not point at Johnson or the INFAC members on Armory Place. All officers advised that neither Johnson nor the other INFAC members perceived a threat from the officers on the roof, because neither Johnson or the other INFAC members moved to cover when they saw the officers on the roof of the Jefferson County Grand Jury building. If convicted at trial, the statutory maximum sentence is 20 years in federal prison. A federal complaint is a written statement of the essential facts of the offense charged and must be made under oath before a U.S. magistrate judge. The charge set forth in a complaint is merely an accusation, and the defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. The FBI, Louisville Division, and Louisville Metro Police Department are investigating this case. The case falls within the purview of the Attorney General's task force to combat violent anti-government extremism. Launched in June 2020, the task force is dedicated to supporting the investigation and prosecution of any person or group who commits violence in the name of an anti-government ideology. So this is the press release from the United States Attorney's Office there in Louisville, Kentucky. They're in Kentucky. So obviously it is garbage. It is garbage not because Johnson or Grandmaster Jay, as he has known, did or did not point a weapon. Obviously, Johnson is not crazy. And obviously, if he had pointed a weapon at them, and you have at least three branches of military forces on top of that building, there's no way in hell that they would, first of all, would not have, if they felt they were in danger, would not have tried to eliminate that danger violently the way the United States government does every time, even when there is no danger. In fact, they said he had an assault weapon and they didn't fire, and they killed Black people all over this country for having cell phones, et cetera. And I've just heard one brother in Ohio was just gunned down by police because he had a Subway sandwich in his hand. So the idea that Johnson could have stood there blinding them with a flashlight in a threatening fashion that with an assault rifle and they not do anything about it for 3 months is just ridiculous. And all of us know that. And I just think that there's a lot that's going on here. And some of this we need to speak to, because part of what is happening, and I understand that Johnson has been released, and I'm told he was released on his own recognizance. And because of that, there has been some controversy surrounding this issue surrounding Johnson himself. There has always been some controversy surrounding Johnson. But the truth of the matter is that the US government is against the notion, the total notion of armed Black people, that everything that they do is designed to keep African people from being armed. That's why you see the stop and frisk efforts being made in New York and Philadelphia, where hundreds of thousands of African people have been stopped and searched. This is gun control in the African community. All of the liberals who claim that they want gun control, they have it when it comes to our communities, because gun control is always there. And it's there because the objective is to make sure that African people are never armed. And so whatever may be surrounding the issue with Johnson in terms of his being released on recognizance or anything like that, the truth of the matter is that this image of this African and who has led protests, I know he doesn't like calling them protests, but that's all they are, protests and demonstrations with hundreds of armed men. This is something that is clearly problematic for the United States government that has gone so far as to declare Africans who think like I think and who think like you think, those of you who are looking at this and participating in this discussion on today, that we are some kind of Black identity extremists, and therefore we are subject to be characterized as domestic terrorists, which is part of what this charge against Johnson really represents. It's any kind of political anti-government protest, they say, that is supposed to be threatening is what they are looking out for and why they claim they arrested Johnson. So I want to say that part of what's going on is to deal with that, is to crush the idea that African people should be armed and willing to fight and shoot and defend ourselves. They want this image of a lingering image of Africans who are on our bellies crawling and begging white power to be nice to us, to not harm us, to not harm our children, and to not destroy the future of our people. This is what they would have us do. This whole concept that they have imposed on our community of pacifism, more appropriately called masochism, where no matter what our enemies do to us, we cannot defend ourselves. We're talking about this charge being made against Johnson. And again, what are the charges against the murderers of Breonna Taylor? What kind of a massive investigation is going on around what happened with Breonna Taylor? What about the killer of Mike Brown and all the other Mike Browns around this country, Africa, and around the world, Black people around the world? And we don't see this approach being taken by the US government, because the US government has to use force, violence, because violence is what colonialism is. You have to have violence in order to maintain colonial domination. Colonialism is violence. So part of what it is to disarm African people, to make sure that we are disarmed, to make sure that they reinforce the notion of criminalization of African people. So it is less likely for Africans to be armed. For example, throughout the South, the government immediately following the so-called Civil War and the so-called Emancipation Proclamation created laws that throughout the South that any African, any person who has committed a felony would be unable to carry weapons. That was throughout this country. A felon in possession of a weapon got a serious charge added to it. When you look at the situation, you look at the data, you look at the stats, and you see that most of the felons that they would be talking about would be African people. And throughout the South, we know that laws were created that disenfranchised Africans right after we had won the right to vote by declaring that anybody who was a felon would lose the right to vote. So there's something like 14 different states in the South that where Africans don't have the right to vote. And all of this is contrived to maintain the colonial domination of African people. That is what it is. It is colonialism. And colonialism is violent by nature. It is where a foreign and alien power will occupy, will control the political and economic and social lives of another people. And that's what we have when we look at what's happening to us in the United States. Africans in the United States, we have various forms of colonialism. We have it all over the world. Sometimes it's called indirect rule. It's called neo-colonialism. Colonialism, sometimes white power and blackface. All over Africa, we see that. And the main objective, every place you see that, is to keep the masses unarmed so that the people cannot defend themselves. And then to impose on the people silliness that says that to defend ourselves is somehow lacking civilization, to pick up the weapon to defend ourselves, our future, and our children, and our family is not only criminal behavior, but it's immoral. So this is what's imposed on our community. So here we have the emergence of this entity that's called INFAC. And I know very little about it. And I think that's true of a lot of people, and which is probably a basis for some of the controversies in the African community surrounding this question. But another aspect of the controversy is something that we really have to look at. And that is that this US government and the liberals and white rulers of this country and the world they have always engaged in doing everything they could to suppress the just struggle of African people by any means necessary, by imposing on our community this nonviolent fantasy. They would dismiss the idea that we should really be fighting for freedom. And they would say that our objective has to be to make our oppressors love us. This shows something about how noble we are. We don't get angry. We don't fight back. That's why you hear all of these hustlers, lawyers who come into every instance where an African is murdered and get the family that has lost a loved one to first come out saying, we're not angry, we love everybody, et cetera, et cetera. This is the kind of philosophy. It is philosophy at gunpoint. It is a philosophy that's imposed on our community, that it is violence by the colonial state that supports a philosophical worldview that presupposes Africans are not supposed to fight back. And so you will hear struggles that we're supposed to be fighting against racism, or we don't have any demands. We just say Black Lives Matter. And in some instances go further than that, demanding hands up, don't shoot. This is what's been imposed on the colonized. Nothing is like that is being imposed on the colonist or the colonizer. It's just we. And this is part of what we're looking at when we look at what has happened with this case here. And this is regardless of the controversy surrounding this comrade, Grandmaster Jay. Like I said, I don't know anything about it, and I just only know a little bit about INFAC itself. But what is interesting is that when they stepped out with those weapons, how it was something that many Africans were thrilled to see African people in the face of being gunned down throughout this country and around the world. It seemed like that Africans had grown some kind of backbone and were standing up. And so that was something that influenced the popularity and grew the numbers of people who have come to be affiliated with INFAC. So that's one aspect of it. And I think that needs to be said. And I want to say that this nonsense about nonviolence and how African people are to be nonviolent. We remember Dylan Roof. We remember this guy, this white man, who goes into a church in Charleston, South Carolina, and murders 9 people, 9 African people, while they were doing what the white people said you're supposed to do, and that's pray all the time. He murders 9 people, and then when the cops come to get him, they stop at a fast food joint to get him a sandwich on the way out. We know that how the state always supports the ability to kill us. We remember this other young man who actually came up to a demonstration and with a gun and pulled his weapon. He was there to protect the white businesses, etc. A 17-year-old teenager, and he kills something. He shoots 3 people. I think he kills at least one of the people, and then he goes home, and he turns himself in later. In fact, while he was out there at this demonstration where he killed the people, the police were happy to see him. And then after he turns himself in, he's arrested, and then white people send thousands and thousands of dollars to support his release, to support some kind of defense thing for him. So clearly what we are looking at in a time of severe crisis for the whole social system, when the people who are colonized around the world are rising up to fight back, this becomes one of the weapons used against the people is this assumption that there's something immoral and wrong about Africans fighting back on the one hand, while on the other hand, you see all kinds of evidence of popular support for murderers of our community. When we say popular support, we're talking about there's an election that just happened in this country where everybody recognized, all the African people voted for Joe Biden, not because they love Biden, because he's somebody who supported killer cops who's gunned us down throughout the street, but because Trump comes out and says this is who he is. And it's clear that white people, many of the white people who voted for Biden, voted for Trump, were voting for all the anti-Black, anti-African, anti-immigrant, anti-people policies of Trump. 57% of the white people who participated in the election, and this election that just passed, that the one that Trump is still contesting, the one where 80% of the Republican Party members refused to concede that he lost, the one where the majority of white people actually think that he won the election, you have a situation where 57% of them, this is a popular expression of anti-African politics, anti-African stance, and what have you. This is what we are up against. And guess what? The colonizer is the one who makes the law. The colonizer legalizes himself. The slave master legalizes slavery and legalizes his relationship to slavery. So this notion that somehow Johnson may have broken the law, and I don't, is fallacious, because the law doesn't mean anything when it comes to African people. In fact, what you see is that we have ruled without regard for law sometimes, but sometimes the law says slavery is legal. This is this thing that we have dealt with all these years. So there's a contest that's emerging, that's getting deeper every day. And this contest revolves around the fact that that African people are becoming more defiant. It comes in the context of more than 10,000 protests, demonstrations, uprising that's happened in this country between the March 25th, May 25th, and sometimes in August. More than 10,000 of those. And there's a big debate that's going on about how to control this. Well, it's not necessarily, some of it's public. Trump is the law and order guy, and you don't hear Biden or any of the others really denouncing it. They are all saying that you got to work legally. Obama said even after they murder us, that the court has spoken. This is the answer that you got, and the court will always speak in the interest of colonialism and not in the interest of the colonized. So the question of violence and nonviolence is not a question of legality. It's a question of who has the power and who defines the law. It's the question of the fact that law is the opinion of the ruling class. Our party has never shied away from what it's going to take for us to be free. And in our working platform that was created in 1979, and then in our first Congress in 1981 was ratified, we say on point number 8, we want the immediate withdrawal of US police from our oppressed and exploited communities. We believe that the various US police agencies which occupy our communities are armed of the US colonialist state, which is responsible for keeping our people enslaved and terrorized. We believe that the US police agencies do not serve us, but instead represent the first line of US defense against the just struggle of our people for peace, dignity, and socialist democracy. We believe that therefore we believe that the US police is an illegitimate standing army, a colonial army in the African community, and must withdraw immediately from our community to be replaced by our liberation forces, whose struggles in defense of our community and against our oppression demonstrate their loyalty to our community and their willingness to serve in this interest. Right now, there are men who are in prison in this country, African men, others who have fought to defend our people, who have done whatever was necessary against the horrible oppression that we experienced. They are in prison. They have been in prison, some for more than 50 years. One, Sundiata Kohli, he's 83 years old. We do not see any movement by the liberals or the federal government or anybody else to get them out of prison, because what they have done is heroic. what they have done. These people who with the Black Liberation Army have been heroes who have tried to defend our communities, but to do so, they had to break the law because the law was a colonial law. It was a law that supported slavery. We say in point number 10, we believe we want the right to build an African People's Liberation Army. This is a statement to Black people at this time. It's an important statement because we are engaged in the struggle of pacifism and the struggle against pacifism and masochism and doing everything to disarm the people like Sundiata Acolo, people like the Black Liberation Army, people like Jomo and other forces who were willing to do what's necessary to free our people. This was a part of the struggle that was in support of positions coming from comrades like Malcolm X. He says, we want the right, this is number 10, to build an African People's Liberation Army. And then we give all of the basis for stating that. But the point is that part of what we're looking at is the US government engaging in this contest to crush the opposition, any politic that's emerging now of people who are colonized to take our freedom, to take it by any means necessary, to say, we don't give a damn what the law says. If the law oppresses us, if the law kills us in the streets with impunity, then the law is no good to us, that the people have to have our own law. That's what taking power means. That's what Black power means. That's what it is that we have to be engaged in. That's why we put forth the stands of Black community control of the police. So we can't say too much about this attack on Grandmaster Jay, except it is a part of the attack by the master plan of the colonizers. And whatever contradictions and controversy may surround him, we know that the US government is intent and determined, especially at a time like this, that there should not be any kind of resistance. And some of these people who are pacifists, they do so in the name of Christianity and Jesus. And I just remind you that if you go to Luke, this is in the 22, 36 through 38, Jesus made the statement, he said to them, but now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. And he was saying this because the Hebrews were dominated by Roman colonialists, and he was telling them that they had to organize to fight against oppression. And then I would go to David Walker because we have a history of resistance, and they know we have a history of resistance, and they would do anything they can to make sure that we do not rise up and take our power back. And David Walker, 1830, he wrote this: now I ask you, had you not rather be killed than to be a slave to a tyrant who takes the life of your mother, wife, and dear little children? Look upon your mother, wife, and children and answer God Almighty, and believe this, that it is no more harm for you to kill a man who is trying to kill you than it is for you to take a drink of water when thirsty. This is what David Walker said, 1830. That was 1829. And then in 1830, of course, we saw Nat Turner take him up on that and initiate a struggle, for our liberation. So there's a history of resistance, and they would smother that history by being able to put down some example of people standing up. Now, there's a difference. The African People's Socialist Party understands this. I'm going to be clear. There's a difference between war and revolution. When you look at war, you're looking at a contest between armies. When you look at a revolution, you're looking at a contest between social systems. And just because you have an army of people, a number of people who are prepared to take up guns, is not a statement that you're prepared to make a revolution, not even a statement that you understand that revolution is necessary. Because the objective is not just because we are angry, not just because they killed somebody, but how do we overturn a system that kills us? How do we win our freedom as a people? That's the contest that we're engaged in. That's what the African People's Socialist Party is about, making revolution, overturning this system. And of course, that will mean that we will have to do everything necessary to make that happen, but it has to be a part of attack. It has to be based on a scientific assessment of our situation, our relationship to this country, to the world. It has to recognize that African people are one people stretched across the globe, just like David Walker did. His message was to Black people African people around the world, David Walker's manifesto. So that's what we have to understand. We have to be free. And being free is more than just a contest between two armies. It means that we have to challenge the whole social system. It means that we recognize we have a theory, we have a philosophy that's based on recognition that the whole social system itself came into existence through attacking Africa and enslaving and dispersing Africans around the world, and we haven't had any freedom. This has happened 600 years ago by Portugal, and we've been still fighting the same battle. And we can't fight the battle, just thinking that we can engage the enemy on its own terms. We have to build a revolutionary process, a revolutionary movement, and understand we engage in a protracted struggle. One thing that's really interesting and helpful about what Grandmaster Jay has done, he has shown us and the world, first of all, that there are hundreds of African people who are going to be the material that will help to wage this struggle the way it has to be waged in order for us to win our freedom. And when I say the way it has to be waged, what I'm talking about is that we are going to have to be able to fight another kind of struggle. It will definitely be a struggle that requires an armed approach to it. But it's going to have to be based on a strategy that recognizes that you can't fight this enemy on its own terms. You don't fight it face to face. You follow the leadership of people like Mao Zedong and people like General Jia, who defeated the French and who defeated the Americans in an anti-colonial war and an anti-colonial struggle, an anti-colonial revolution. And that's what we have to do. I want to say that there was a situation where in 1972, December 31st, 1972, this was a message that was sent on December 31st by Mark Essex. And he said that the letter was sent to the media. And it says, Africa greets you. On December 31st, 1972, approximately 11 p.m., the downtown New Orleans Police Department will be attacked. Reason? Many. But the death of 2 innocent brothers will be avenged, and many others. And then what happens is 7 days later, after having attacked this and having killed police there, he perched atop the Howard Johnson Hotel in downtown New Orleans, and with the red, black, and green liberation flag and a rifle, where he held police at bay for more than 12 hours. And masses of people were standing around and watching the police trying to capture this brother. They finally did. They got a helicopter that they used in Vietnam and attacked the same thing that they did when they killed those Africans and move Africans in 1985. And every time the helicopter would try to approach his location, Essex, who had changed his name to Mata, would fired on the chopper, and the crowds of Africans who had gathered below, they were cheering and applauding. And when the smoke cleared, that he had inflicted up to 22 casualties on police officials, 12 of them fatalities, including the assistant chief of police. And so the armed reports were saying that a squad of Black Panthers were on the roof, armed to the teeth. They were wrong. It was one lone African soldier. And a point that we would make is that we can engage in struggle. We have always resisted. We have never hesitated when we felt that we had the ability to use every power at our command. We have never hesitated to fight against the humiliating oppression of our people. We have always opposed those who would say that the only way that we can move forward is crawling on our bellies and kissing the feet of our oppressors. And so anytime when you see something like what we've seen here with this thing by Grandmaster Jay, we don't know Grandmaster Jay. I don't. We don't know too much about what he stands for, but I do know that his picking up that weapon and getting hundreds of other African people to do that was something that the US government and all the colonial powers on earth will find is intolerable. What I am doing now is saying that I unite with those people who say, hands off, who say, free this brother, Grandmaster Jay, and also to say that we have to build our own capacity. The African People's Socialist Party has been doing this for nearly 50 years. And right now, we are involved in the process of building for our plenary, which will be happening soon. It will happen, in fact, between February 6th and the 9th of this year. And the theme of this plenary is African workers of the world, unite and organize. And this process is one that will take us to the conclusion that we have to come to if we're going to end this ability for this grand master plan to continue domination of African people. So we say that we believe that African people have the right to resist, but we have to go beyond this whole question of self-defense. It's beyond self-defense. The fact is, Mao Zedong, who led the Chinese Revolution, said years ago that any act in a war of national liberation, any act is an act of self-defense. It doesn't matter who fired the first shot or the last shot. If you're colonized and somebody is shooting at, or firing at, or throwing a brick at, or spitting on a colonizer, it's an act of self-defense. So we support this. And we will see what the outcome of this is going to be. I mean, some people have been made suspicious because initially, and there's some controversy. And you have to say, where is the origin of the controversy? Is the origin of the controversy based on the fact that many people believe that you shouldn't be able to defend yourself? Certainly that happened with Robert Williams, who in 1954 was head of the NAACP in Monroe, North Carolina, and armed the people in defense of themselves against Klan terror there, and leading the NAACP to kick him out of the organization. Certainly, you know, we see these expressions happen in many other places and under various kinds of situations. But the fact is that African people are engaged in a very serious struggle, and our only way forward has to lead us to absolute, total independence, self-government as a people. Otherwise, they will kill us because they occupy our communities just like they occupy foreign territories like in Afghanistan, in Syria, in other places around the world where they are murdering us with impunity and murdering people with impunity. So we say, Africans of the world, unite and organize. February 6 through 9, 2021, the plenary of the African People's Socialist Party. Go to APSP Uhuru, APSPUhuru.org, Uhuru,